Over the years, the Africa's big five have become endangered species. The lion, leopard, buffalo, elephant, and the rhino are always targeted because of either of their skin, teeth, horns, or tusks. This despite the animals being the ultimate safari checklist on game drives. Welcome to Lewa Wildlife Conservancy in Kenya, which is home to about 400 migratory elephants. The Conservancy monitors the status of elephant populations across the Conservancy and across northern Kenya, collaborating with a host of partners including Save the Elephants, the Kenya Wildlife Service, and the Northern Rangelands Trust.
We have the collared elephant. What we normally do, we share this screen with Save the Elephant. It's an organization called Save the Elephant. So we pick the matriarchs and the big bulls. We feel maybe a bull have got a big tusk, which might be a threat. You know, when the poachers see a big tusk of an elephant, they just feel like killing that elephant or doing poaching and getting the tusk. So what we do every day, we come here and see where there's a lot of elephant, where there's a lot of concentration of elephant. We take the GPS position of those elephants and give to the rangers in those locations so that they can be able to look after them or to make sure that those elephants are safe all the time.
Poaching is the biggest threat to elephants. A research conducted by Save the Elephants estimates that the number of elephants killed for ivory between 2010 and 2012 was 100,000 in East Africa. During the World Elephant Day marked on 13th August 2020, Kenya Wildlife Director General Brigadier Retired John Waweru said elephant recovery strategies has seen more than 100% growth in Kenya's population from 16,000 in 1989 to 34,800 by the end of 2019. Kenya and other sub-Saharan countries in recent years have seen an increase in poaching. Poaching is driven by high demand for ivory in Asia and rhino horns that are used in traditional medicine. While we were documenting these particular stories from Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, we received reports that there is an elephant that needs intervention from the KWS officers together with Lewa officers. We are rushing there to see what the elephant is suffering from. Join us. An elephant protects its young ones, but in such cases, KWS officers weaken her so as to be able to treat her. The treatment process begins. The elephant was wounded by poachers. The wildlife veterinarian from KWS and Save the Elephants diagonized the elephant and awaits its recovery.
We were informed that the elephant got an injury sometime in February. And they have been trying to check around on it, and they realized that the wound is not healing, and therefore we needed to do the intervention. So that's why we came over to do the intervention. Found out that the elephant had suffered from a spear wound, and the injury was, the wound was infected, and therefore we gave the necessary treatment, and we have a good prognosis. Looking at it, I would give it maybe 2 weeks, and we shall have a ground team which will be updating us on the progress.
What does it take for an intervention to take place on an injured animal?
Time you intervene, you got to ensure that between where you are and the nearest danger, then there's at least 5 to 10 minutes before the animal gets to that kind of an area. Alternatively, you ensure that you've got resources in terms of vehicles so that you can block, you can prevent that kind of an animal from going into a valley. So it takes time, it takes resources, it takes personnel, and then you need to have been proactive, because before you mobilize the resources, you don't want to mobilize your resources, then you find that your resources have gone to waste.
Lewa Wildlife Conservancy has a team of rangers who monitor the elephants. Met Francis Kobia, elephant monitoring officer, who tells us how he discovered the elephant had a wound.
My work is to monitor the elephants within Lewa, and on my monitoring period, I met one female with a small calf, was hand as severe wound, and at that time I reported the case to the ops room, where we report the cases, and then they call the vet, and then the vets came, and then we intervene on it.
Tell us about the nature of your work. How is it on a daily basis?
Yeah, my nature of my work, it's somehow very difficult sometimes, because I usually ride my motorbike all the way along Lewa Conservancy, and sometimes you met all the other species of the animals like buffalo, rhinos, and even lions on my way. Most of the time I took the pictures of elephants as INDs when IND and demographic work. So at that time it's a bit risky, but I love it, and it's very enjoyable when I monitor all those elephants within Lewa.
Geoffrey Chege, an officer in charge of Lewa Wildlife Conservation and Management Department, confirmed that they have a program on monitoring the endangered species in the Conservancy aimed at preserving the remaining animals.
Department of Conservation is mainly divided into three main sections. We've got the wildlife vet, which is now linked to exactly what you've done, and it's concerned with clinical interventions of wildlife. So all wildlife that are in need of intervention, maybe they have been injured because of one reason or another, or animals that are sick because of one reason or another, or maybe animals that have been injured because of issues of human-wildlife conflict. So my department is responsible for those kind of interventions. The other thing that is the wildlife vet section is responsible for is surveillance of diseases, because you've got to be proactive sometimes so that you can be able to be ahead of the game. Before a disease strikes, then you ensure that you've known what is happening, and then you introduce the relevant mitigation strategies. So our work mainly concerns the endangered species, of which rhinos, elephants, lions, giraffes fall in that category. But we also do engage ourselves in very many other thematic areas. So there will be fauna, that is the birds, elephant monitoring, rhino monitoring, predators monitoring, hydrological monitoring, that's water monitoring, and also aspects of issues of habitat. There is danger, then there's at least 5 to 10 minutes before the animal gets to that kind of an area. Alternatively, you ensure that you've got resources in terms of vehicles so that you can block, you can prevent that kind of an animal from going into a valley. So it takes time, it takes resources, it takes personnel, and then you need to have been proactive, because before you mobilize the resources, you don't want to mobilize your resources, then you find that your resources have gone to waste.
Once the elephant treatment is done, the KWS and Lewa Wildlife Conservancy teams unite the calf with the mother.
Different animals require different types of interventions, and your reaction or response after the intervention is done depends on the animal. For in this case that we have just had right now, it was a mother with a 7 to 8 or so month-old calf. That kind of a calf is very vulnerable. One is it's not yet feeding on grass, on browse. It is fully dependent on the mother. So you've got to ensure that by the time you're reviving the mother, once the mother is revived, you've got to ensure that you reunite that calf with the mother. One, because of nourishment, The calf is dependent on the milk of that mother. And number two is that the calf is very vulnerable to predation. If hyenas come across that kind of a calf, that is just free meal. And we've got more than 50 plus lions on Lewa, over 130 or so hyenas on Lewa, so that this is just cheap meal for those kind of lions and hyenas. So you've got to ensure that, irrespective of the time, you got to do your level best. It's not an excuse. Of course, sometimes things do happen, but it's not an excuse that you did not reunite the animals. When the worst comes to the worst, well, nature sometimes takes its course, but you've got to do your level best to reunite the mother and the calf before you leave.
The intervention of treating this elephant is important in saving the endangered species so as to have a complete ecosystem. Joash Onsare, Lewa Wildlife Conservancy.